Morning, everyone, and welcome to Livewire Live. It's good to be back here again and in person this year. So, as you can see, my name is, or you would have seen, my name is Ani Salvaraja, and I'm a peasant and a loser. So now that we've got that straight, the presentation today is called From Livewire to Live Well, and I want to talk to you a little bit about a dynamic I'm seeing in the Australian market at the moment, or the Australian in Australia at the moment. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what I'm calling the advice imperative. So I've got to get these. Oh, there you go. So let's dig into some of the data in an unplugged sort of way. So in Australia, we have an ageing problem. We have an ageing problem globally. But in Australia, it exists in the same way as it does in other countries. We've got about 4.3 million Australians who are over 65 today, and that's forecasted to grow to 8.8 million in 2050. That's 25 years ago. Who remembers going to the Sydney Olympics? Anyone? Well, that was 25 years ago. So if you think 25 years from now is a long time away, it'll go like a blink of an eye. In that population of over 65s, 58% of those 4.3 million people today are on some kind of advice, age pension payment. And 60% of that 58% are on a full age pension payment. That bill today is about $55 billion a year for the Australian government, and that's forecasted, in parallel with the population growth, to be 110 billion in 25 years' time. So that's quite a large increase, more than double in 25 years, which is effectively 3% of GDP today going to 4.5% of GDP in 25 years' time. At the same time, and in parallel, our revenue pool from which to pay those age pension payments is reducing. The number of taxpayers, the ratio of taxpayers today to recipients of the age pension payments is 4.1, and that's going to fall to 2.7 by 2050. So a smaller revenue pool, larger cost, and in that context of that same period of time, we now have less advisors in Australia to actually service the population, to help us bridge that gap. So what does that mean? A lot of you have been in finance, a lot of you investors, obviously, you're in the room. That's a chart that you never want to see for anyone or any company that you're investing in. But that's the chart for Australia. That's what it looks like in terms of retirement income or retirement costs versus the revenue pool from which to pay those payments. Not a great look. So thinking about how that plays out in Australia, the simple answer is, well, we need to get moving, and we need to create more self-funded retirees. Now that's really easy to say, a lot harder to do. Self-funded retirees means that we can retire without reliance on the Australian government. About 50% of Australians today rely on some kind of government support. So it's unsustainable. Now we have to do this in the context of also the great wealth transition, or what I'm calling the handoff. $3.5 trillion of wealth will transfer generations between now and 15 years from now. So the recipients of that money will obviously help the problem, or help partly solve the problem. But the problem is those recipients are not engaged with advice. Of the 20 million Australians today who are adults, only 2.2 million actually engage in advice today. 1.5 million are self-directed, so they invest on their own behalf, and the rest actually don't do anything. They rely on their super funds to get them to retirement and to fund their retirement post that working lives. So we did a lot of research around that demographic of clients who are potentially the recipients of that $3.5 trillion of wealth. And there's 4 things that stand out. The first thing is they want more transparency to what their advisor is doing and why. So there's a lack of information in terms of what they're engaging their advisor to do and why they're doing it. They want to have control. They don't want to do the work, but they want to have control, and they want to understand who to trust in those relationships. So that's an important part of them continuing to be engaged in advice. They don't know the value of advice. They are, when they engage with an advisor, they're usually faced with a substantial upfront bill, and that could range from $5,000 to $15,000. And it's hard for them to make that assessment on whether that advice is of value to them. They only understand the value of advice when it's actually too late. And that's a real issue for the industry and for all of us in terms of, us, we're all clients effectively at the end of the day. And the last thing that they tell us is that they want to engage more digitally. And that's two ways. They want to be able to access information digitally, and they want to be able to engage with their advisor or their provider in a much more digital way. So we really have to think about how we reimagine engaging with our clients. And I liked what Victor was saying earlier in that nothing is going to be the same again. So this is kind of a little bit of the theme in terms of we have to think differently around how we, as an industry, engaging with us as clients. So the solution, it's easy to say to think differently, but the reality is we have to think about how we engage with clients generally. I spent some time at ComSec and then more recently at Bell Direct. And one of the things we learned is that even those clients who are self-directed get to a point where their portfolios achieve a size that becomes meaningful to them. And when they get to that point, they are paralyzed by a fear of loss. So they stop. And they don't know what to do then. And there's no pathway for them to actually validate what they're doing is appropriate, or no pathway for them to actually go and get someone to advise within the same firms. They have to leave their provider to go to somebody else. So as an industry, the financial services industry, we're very siloed in the way we think about it. Clients. We think about clients either as being advised, and if you run an advice business, you think every client should be advised. If you're in an online business, or you're running an online business, you think everybody should be self-directed. But the reality is, none of us wake up in the morning thinking, I'm an advised client, or I'm a self-directed client. The reality is, we're all in the same boat in this room. We all have different needs at different times of our lives, and we also have different needs for different buckets of money. You might be self-directed in a discretionary portfolio, but you might need some advice for a portfolio, part of your portfolio that's more meaningful or potentially your superannuation balance. So as an industry, we have to think about how we're engaging the client and meeting the clients to where they're at versus forcing them to chop and change providers depending on what their needs are. So part of that is also creating a piece in the middle, which is what we call at Bell's episodic advice. So that's the link to allow clients to understand, to move from being self-directed into advice, or who are being advised to self-directed, or have different relationships for different parts of their portfolios. And thinking, and obviously what our clients are telling us, or the recipients of all that money and the next generation of retirees are telling us, we have to do it in a way that's digital and personal at the same time. So the good news is, that's what we're building at Bell's. We now have all of our clients on one single platform, whether they're self-directed or advised. Those clients can move up and down the service proposition regardless of what they need. What we're working on now is creating that episodic advice capability in the middle that will create paths and journeys for those clients to either get validated in their self-directed journey or to move to an advisor with the same firm, and they're not having to change providers to do that. And at the same time, we may have clients who are currently advised, but may want to have a portion of their portfolio self-directed. And in fact, we do that. 72% of advised clients in Australia today also have an online investing account. So we know that already exists. So what we're trying to do is create something that's a little bit more engaging for the customers and clients, and allow them to engage with us in a way that they want to work rather than how we as an industry want to work. So just to summarise, in terms of Livewire and Living Well, this is really about creating an opportunity for clients to create a better retirement life. And if we can do that, then we're reducing the burden and the drag on the national purse. So this is really about us as an industry, because thinking more effectively around how we engage with the clients in the way that they want to engage. And for clients, which includes all of us, finding a provider that ultimately helps you to find peace of mind and confidence in your wealth journey. So hopefully we create an environment where the only thing we're running out of is ways to spend the money rather than the money. Thank you.